Hello. Okay, this is gonna be probably a pretty short video. It's just gonna be my final thoughts on Zero Time Dilemma and possibly the whole the series as a whole, the Zero Escape series. So in this particular game, oh, hold on, I can hear myself through the stream. There we go. All right. I'm definitely probably a bigger fan of the second game in the series, just because I feel it doesn't go out of its way to be overly graphic with some of its violence. The danger scenarios presented in this third game are definitely several notches above what are in the two previous games. And part of that has to do with the antagonists involved. In the previous two games, the antagonists are literally part of the cast, or the obvious 9 participants of the various games that they play. In the third game, we have a 10th participant who we do not see until we go out of our, the only way you see him is if during the Reservoir Dogs style standoff with weapons that Q Team has, you type in Delta. That is literally the only way to reveal there is a 10th character. And the first time that happened to me, it felt cheap. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not saying there weren't some hints that he was there, but it definitely felt out of left field. So, and Delta's controlling of the situation is far more sadistic than either June and Santa in 999 or Dr. Sigma and Akane and Luna in Virtue's Last Reward. I mean, they set out the scenarios, while they certainly were not bloodless, they certainly set them out to minimize suffering, like maximize danger but minimize suffering. Whereas Delta hydrofluoric acid showers is pretty darn sadistic. And then, the scenes with fire axe and chainsaws are certainly a cut above, shall we say. But I do appreciate what this game has tried to do with its scenario and how it tries to tie it into the other two games. I do like the fact that it is a closed loop where Sigma and Diana kind of lay the seeds, so to speak, of the events of Virtue's Last Reward, and we see the specific ending that does lead to Virtue's Last Reward, where D-Team does manage to make it out, but Mira infects Phi, and that's what leads to the Virtue's Last Reward series of events. So I do very much appreciate the conundrum that Delta presents the party with when they finally reach that final ending, that here was a group of 9 people who won a coin toss, did not have to go through any suffering or misfortune or any of the garbage that, they have to go through in other timelines, and you're just going to bully them out of their experience and they're now gone. It does kind of really put the whole Back to the Future, you change things in the past and you're the time traveler, you come back to the present and the present has changed what happened to the other you into context, and it is a very valid decision. So these 9 people who shifted from the absolute most horrendous circumstances can come in and just absolutely obliterate the versions of themselves that didn't experience that. And while it does seem a little bit heavy-handed as far as what the writers are trying to accomplish with that particular point, it does feel very much at home in the series. And I suppose that is the ultimate dilemma of the Zero Time dilemma. So, yeah. The characters, I thought were pretty good. I do love the fact that they brought back the 4 main protagonists from previous games, Akane, Junpei, Sigma, and Phi, and then presented us with 5 other new characters: Carlos, Diana, Sean, Mira, and Eric. Although I think you're definitely supposed to get Luna vibes from Diana. Although Diana feels very much like an actual human person, whereas Luna seemed to be, you know, a bit two-dimensional. But you can definitely see where Luna's inspiration came from. The fact that Diana is a very flawed, very human person. I do like the subtle undertones that Sigma is, I don't want to say has a degree of psychopathy, but he definitely doesn't have a very empathetic personality, and he definitely thinks everyone's out for themselves until the moment that he's presented with, you know, the situation where he does end up getting together with Diana and they end up having children together. That makes him definitely rethink his worldview, where people are a, hey, what can I do for you? What can you do for me? Kind of perspective on the world. And I think it's the game, well, maybe not this game, but I think it could be very interesting if a game did have perhaps 3 different degrees of people who feel less empathy than, say, the normative margin. So like Sigma feels everything is kind of a bargain, whereas Mira just does not understand how empathetic humans work at all. And maybe you could have somebody like Carlos who, well, Carlos seems genuine, but if you had a character like Carlos who is always about performing duty to the degree in which it makes him appear better in the eyes of others, that could be a pretty compelling story if you have those 3 characters with that degree of dysfunction interacting in a story together. So something I'll probably look out for in future experiences, video game experiences, shall we say. Yeah, I find it very interesting that all these characters go through so much suffering in all the various different endings, but the one that really feels like really sickening and why you absolutely hate Delta is just not only his willingness to, you know, put all these 9 characters into danger, is also what he does to the dog Gab. And it's such a small thing, and it's a cliche trope, the kick the dog trope, or the, you know, almost to the point of slaughtering the dog trope. It is a very effective way, because I think in most instances, humans, there are plenty of people who are like, why do you care so much about an animal versus, you know, a human being? I think a lot of people's gut instinct reaction to that is that an animal doesn't have the agency of a human being, therefore it is more innocent, shall we say, than a adult human being who has full agency. So the adult human being who has full agency has a knowledge of their situation and what is happening to them, whereas, you know, the tropic kick the puppy moment has a lot to do with the power imbalance of someone who is fully cognizant of the situation in which they're operating and someone who, or someone or something that does not. The puppy has no knowledge of the power imbalance or the consequences of pissing something off. And I guess you could say, I mean, it might be kind of an overblown statement to say it's in microcosm kind of the power imbalance that you feel in Lovecraftian cosmic horror. It's like you are an ant to these large alien beings, so much so that it's equivalent to a sadistic human psychopath and an innocent little creature. So it's interesting, the visceral reaction that people have to that. So, and I do too. Like, I want to see Gab get out. Gab is like, oh, you know, I understand that terrible things are going to happen to the 9 cast members, but Gab is something in addition to that. And I think, well, it certainly is a plot device type character, and it does make me feel so, like, I mean, the writers use it to make you feel something, and I definitely do feel something, and that's just a visceral thing. That mileage might vary from player to player, but I will admit it is something that I do experience myself when playing the game. So all right, I do like some of the visual nods that this game does, because after I restarted this game and remembered that Diana is mother to Phi, I definitely loaded back up Virtue's Last Reward to see if I could make note of like eye color, like, because even in this game Phi has white hair but she has red eyebrows, so I would load up Virtue's Last Reward to see, does she have red eyebrows? But it's never close enough to the camera that you can definitely determine it. So because in that game it is less of a toon shaded experience and the characters are much further away from the camera, so I couldn't tell for 100% certainty. But I do like the fact that it was kind of tied in that way, and I do like that particular branch of the story, and I do think that is almost the heart and the soul of this game in some way. Because it seems to have some of the most human moments. All the melodrama between Q-Team, well, it presents some of the interesting philosophical and some of the interesting philosophical dilemmas in its ways, and C-Team has its own melodrama between Akane explaining things, Junpei not getting things, and Carlos going, huh? I think D-Team probably had the most just genuine, heartfelt human emotions between the 3 characters. And I think that was definitely the highest point of the game, is what happens to D-Team. Junpei's change over the last year from Ernest wanting to save people in 999 to this just angst-ridden guy in this game is a little weird. And he's, I guess maybe he comes somewhat balanced out by the time he's, you know, in 2074, you know, 55 years in the future. Maybe he's just mellowed out in his 70s. So I don't know. I do like that they had the 4 main protagonists from the 2 previous games all in one place at one time. So I do definitely appreciate my time with the series. 999 is the game that got me into visual novels and somewhat into escape the room type games. I'm not huge into them, and I've played a few real life escape the rooms experiences, but the idea that you could have these very in-depth visual novel experiences that scratch two particular itches for me. One is my love of conspiracy theory kitsch. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do love games that kind of treat them at face value. I mean, I can't like Deus Ex if I don't like conspiracy theories, because that's the game where like all conspiracy theories are true. And the philosophical dilemma, like the fact that they do bring in, you know, the prisoner's dilemma, the Sleeping Beauty problem, the Monty Hall problem, all these kinds of things, the time travel, the many worlds interpretation, not so much the Schrodinger's cat, that's old hat, but I do appreciate that these games really lean into those dilemmas pretty hard and make them central points of the story. So the series is definitely awesome. I'll probably play them again, maybe in 10 years time. Like, it is, I mean, I played 999 over 10 years ago, so Virtue's Last Reward probably 8 years ago, and then Zero Time Dilemma 4 years ago. But yeah, I don't, especially having gone through this in a methodical way where I'm recording all the episodes, if I do check them out again, it'll probably be in 10 years time, and we'll be much closer to the time period that the games actually take place in. You know, going through Virtue's Last Reward and Zero Time Dilemma in the, you know, summer of 2020, when we're still in the heyday of COVID-19, it feels a little close to home. You know, COVID-19 or Article 6, I mean, the symptoms aren't the same, but the fact that it's such a global pandemic that has upset the day-to-day life of so many does feel closer to home, shall we say. So awesome. I hope this was worth watching. I hope y'all got something out of it, and I'm not sure what I'm going to play next. I have a few thoughts. I did purchase and download, let's see, what is it called? AI, the Somnium Files, which is by the same developers as the Zero Escape series, or at least some of the key members. I have no idea what that series is about, but any team that develops these three games, I'm very curious to see what they develop. So I purchased it sight unseen, installed it, and maybe I'll go through that next. My other consideration for the stream is perhaps We Happy Few, which seems to be a how should I put it? Blah, 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 blah. Seems like a dystopian drug-enforced mandatory happiness scenario meets French resistance aesthetics, which, you know, in short, is something I can dig. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. I still got to decide that. In the meantime, I'm going to sign off here. This is the end of Zero Escape. I don't think there's anything else left to explore. At least nothing unexplored that I can see in the flowchart. All right. Y'all take care, and I'll see y'all later. All right, bye.